Imagine a country rising from total devastation, bombed cities, a shattered economy, and almost no natural resources. Now, fast forward just a few decades, and that same country becomes a global leader in cars, electronics, and innovation. That country is Japan. In the 1950s, Japan's economy was barely breathing. By the 1980s, it had become the second largest in the world. How did Japan pull off one of the fastest and most impressive transformations in modern history? Was it luck? Was it the people? Or was there something unique in how the nation rebuilt itself? In this video, we'll uncover the powerful forces that turned post-war Japan into an economic and technological powerhouse, step by step. Welcome to Globe Contrast, where we explore the fascinating differences and hidden similarities between countries across the globe. If you're curious about why nations grow the way they do, you're in the right place. Let's dive into the incredible story of Japan's rise. Before Japan became a modern marvel, it was a nation deeply rooted in tradition. For centuries, Japan remained isolated from the rest of the world, ruled by emperors and shoguns, with a strict social hierarchy and a feudal economy. That changed in the late 1800s with the Meiji Restoration. Japan rapidly modernized its military, industry, and education to catch up with the West. By the early 20th century, Japan had become a regional power, but its ambitions came with a price. Japan's involvement in World War II left the country in ruins. 2 atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, leading to massive destruction and human loss. By the end of the war, Japan's economy had collapsed. Cities were flattened, millions were unemployed. The country had no army, little infrastructure, and barely any natural resources. Many thought Japan would never recover. But what happened next would shock the world. The very things that brought Japan to its knees would become the building blocks of one of the greatest comebacks in history. In 1945, Japan was a defeated nation. Its economy had collapsed. Over 9 million people were homeless. 2 of its cities had been turned to ashes by atomic bombs. But instead of turning inward or falling into chaos, Japan chose a different path: total reconstruction. And surprisingly, one of the most important forces in that rebuilding process came from outside the United States. After the war, Japan was occupied by American forces under General Douglas MacArthur. But this wasn't a hostile occupation. It was a radical transformation. The U.S. rewrote Japan's constitution, turning it into a peaceful, democratic nation. Land reforms broke up the power of old landlords. Women were granted equal rights. Labor unions were encouraged. The government shifted from military expansion to economic development. Instead of building bombs, Japan would build businesses. Perhaps most importantly, Japan invested heavily in education, public health, and infrastructure, all funded and supported by U.S. aid through programs like the Dodge Plan. During this time, Japan became a testing ground for new economic ideas. Its industries were rebuilt from the ground up with modern machinery and techniques. While life in the 1950s was still hard, rationing was common, and poverty widespread, the country now had something it didn't before: a vision for the future. That vision would soon explode into the world's most famous economic miracle. The 1950s and 60s marked a turning point in Japan's story. From the ashes of war, Japan entered one of the fastest periods of economic growth the world had ever seen. Between 1950 and 1973, Japan's economy grew at an average rate of over 9% per year, outpacing even the United States. What sparked this miracle? Several key ingredients came together at just the right time. First was the Korean War, 1950-1953. It might seem unrelated, but this conflict gave Japan a major boost. The U.S. used Japan as a supply base, pouring in contracts, dollars, and demand. This kick-started Japanese factories and created jobs. Second, Japan's government, through its Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MITI, worked hand-in-hand with businesses. Instead of letting the market run wild, they guided industries, invested in strategic sectors, and protected new companies until they could compete globally. Third, Japan focused on export-driven growth. The goal was simple: sell high-quality products to the world. especially to America and Europe. And Japan didn't just copy others. It perfected and refined. Whether it was cars, cameras, or electronics, Japanese products became known for efficiency, reliability, and innovation. Companies like Toyota, Sony, Panasonic, and Honda rose to global fame. Workers were incredibly dedicated, often staying with one company for life. And with a culture of continuous improvement, Kaizen, factories constantly got better, faster, and smarter. By the early 1970s, Japan wasn't just back on its feet. It was a powerhouse, the world's second-largest economy, known for excellence in manufacturing and technology. If factories were the engine of Japan's growth, people were the fuel. One of the most underrated drivers of Japan's success was its highly educated, disciplined, and motivated population. After World War II, Japan made education a national priority. The government invested in rebuilding schools, hiring qualified teachers, and modernizing the curriculum. Literacy rates, which were already high before the war, became nearly universal. By the 1960s, children across Japan were attending school, for 9 years minimum, with many going on to high school and university. The focus wasn't just on knowledge, but also on values, discipline, teamwork, respect, and effort. Students studied long hours. Exams were tough, and in a society where academic success was tied to future job stability, education became a way of life. But it wasn't just about test scores. Japan's workforce became known for its technical skill, attention to detail, and strong work ethic, traits that gave Japanese products a reputation for unmatched quality. Major companies even created their own training programs, ensuring that new employees understood not just the job, but also the company culture. The result? A generation of highly skilled workers who were loyal, efficient, and constantly learning. In a globalizing world, Japan's human capital became one of its strongest competitive advantages. In the eyes of the world, Japan wasn't just rebuilding, it was reinventing. By the 1970s and 80s, Japan was no longer seen as a cheap imitator. It had become a symbol of cutting-edge technology, precision engineering, and reliable innovation. How did this happen? The key was Japan's ability to take existing technologies and make them smaller, faster, better, and cheaper, often through relentless small improvements known as Kaizen. Companies like Sony revolutionized personal electronics. In 1979, the world was stunned by the Sony Walkman, a tiny cassette player that turned music into a mobile experience. Meanwhile, Panasonic, Hitachi, and Sharp were pushing boundaries in television, home appliances, and semiconductors. In the automotive world, Toyota and Honda became giants by producing fuel-efficient, durable, and affordable cars that soon outsold American models. Behind the scenes, Japan was pouring money into research and development. By the 1980s, it was spending more on R&D as a percentage of GDP than almost any other country. Japanese engineers embraced robotics and automation, making factories more productive and less dependent on labor costs. Assembly lines ran smoothly, producing millions of flawless products that rarely needed repair. And while the West saw rapid changes and disruptions, Japan focused on refinement and consistency. This created global trust in the Made in Japan label, synonymous with quality, durability, and technological brilliance. In short, Japan didn't just follow the tech wave, it helped shape it. Japan's rise wasn't just built in factories and labs, it was shaped by something deeper: culture. At the core of Japanese society lies a powerful set of values: discipline, responsibility, loyalty, and perseverance. These weren't just personal virtues, they became the foundation of an entire economic system. One of the most important cultural concepts is gambaru, which means to do your best and never give up, even in the face of hardship. Whether it's a student preparing for exams, a factory worker on the line, or a manager leading a team, the idea is the same: work hard, stay committed, and never cut corners. Another key value is WWII, harmony. In Japanese companies, teamwork and group harmony often come before individual recognition. This fosters cooperation, efficiency, and long-term trust between workers and employers. Many employees joined companies for life, known as lifetime employment. Promotions were often based on seniority and dedication, not just results. While this system had its flaws, it built a sense of belonging, stability, and shared purpose. Punctuality, orderliness, and attention to detail became second nature. Even the smallest task was treated with seriousness. Long hours were common. Some employees stayed after hours simply to show commitment, not because they were told to. While today Japan is rethinking its intense work culture, during its rise, this deep sense of duty played a vital role. It wasn't just about working more. It was about caring more. Japan's culture didn't just support its economy, it supercharged it. Japan didn't just rise economically, it also transformed how people lived, moved, and worked. After the war, Japan faced a massive challenge. Its cities were in ruins. But instead of simply rebuilding the old, Japan imagined something new and bold. One of the most iconic symbols of this transformation is the Shinkansen, or bullet train. Launched in 1964, the Shinkansen connected Tokyo and Osaka with speeds over 200 km/h, becoming the world's first high-speed rail system. It wasn't just fast, it was precise, safe, and reliable. Even today, delays are measured in seconds. This model of efficiency extended to city planning. Tokyo, once a war-ravaged city, became a futuristic metropolis, filled with efficient subway systems, neon-lit commercial zones, and residential areas organized for density and function. Public infrastructure was everywhere: modern airports, clean sidewalks, and world-class roads. Japan also focused on disaster-resilient construction, using cutting-edge engineering to withstand earthquakes and typhoons. Technology was integrated into everyday life: vending machines, automated toilets, and elevators with human-like politeness. Urban life in Japan wasn't just advanced, it was designed for speed, comfort, and safety. The result? A country where millions of people move efficiently through complex urban environments without chaos. Infrastructure in Japan didn't follow development, it led it. While Japan's growth was powered by its people and businesses, its government played a quiet but powerful role in guiding the economy. Unlike fully capitalist systems, Japan followed a guided capitalism model, where the government didn't control the economy outright, but actively shaped its direction. At the center of this strategy was the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, known as WWII. WWII wasn't just a bureaucracy, it was a strategic brain trust. It identified promising industries, offered financial support, controlled imports and exports, and coordinated with private companies to ensure Japan didn't waste resources on weak sectors. Instead of letting all industries compete freely, Japan protected and nurtured sectors like automobiles, steel, and electronics until they were strong enough to compete globally. For example, WWII helped limit car imports in the early stages, giving Toyota and Nissan time to develop. It also invested in R&D and helped small companies access technology and funding. Another policy success was the creation of industrial clusters. Regions like Osaka and Nagoya became hubs of innovation and production, where companies could collaborate and compete at the same time. Japan's banking system also played a role. Large banks worked closely with corporations, offering long-term loans and sharing risk rather than chasing short-term profits. The result was a unique blend, a market economy driven by private innovation, but orchestrated by smart government intervention. And for decades, it worked. Japan grew fast, stayed stable, and avoided major financial crises until the 1990s. Japan's post-war rise was extraordinary, but no nation grows forever without facing new challenges. Today, Japan remains a global economic power, but it's also navigating complex issues that threaten its momentum. The most pressing is demographics. Japan has one of the oldest populations in the world, with nearly 30% of its citizens over the age of 65. Fewer young people means a shrinking workforce, rising healthcare costs, and slower economic growth. Another challenge is stagnation. Since the burst of its economic bubble in the early 1990s, Japan has struggled with low inflation, low growth, and an economy that feels stuck in neutral. But despite these hurdles, Japan continues to influence the world in powerful ways. In culture, Japan has become a global icon. From anime and manga to sushi, Zen philosophy, and minimalist design. Japanese pop culture has fans from New York to Nairobi. In technology, Japan is still a leader in robotics, automotive innovation, and precision manufacturing. Companies like Toyota, Sony, Canon, and Nintendo continue to shape industries. Japan is also a model for resilience, facing earthquakes, tsunamis, and demographic decline with calm innovation. Its cities remain some of the cleanest and safest in the world. Its transportation systems are benchmarks for efficiency. And its society, despite aging, remains highly educated, stable, and peaceful. In short, Japan's influence may no longer be tied to explosive economic growth, but to its refined, enduring excellence. Japan's transformation wasn't just a story of rebuilding, it was a story of reinvention. From the ashes of war, it rose with astonishing speed, driven by smart policies, innovative companies, cultural discipline, and a relentless focus on education, precision, and long-term thinking. It didn't have oil. It didn't have vast land. What it had was a mindset, a belief that with enough effort, even a small island nation could shape the future. And that's exactly what Japan did. It didn't just catch up to the world. It set new standards in quality, design, efficiency, and innovation. Of course, no country is perfect. Japan faces serious demographic and economic challenges. But even today, its influence remains strong, not through power, but through excellence. So what can we learn from Japan's story? That success isn't about size, luck, or resources. It's about vision, resilience, and the ability to adapt. And, in that sense, Japan's rise is more than unique. It's inspiring. Thanks for watching Globe Contrast, where we explore how nations rise, evolve, and shape our world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. What part of Japan's story surprised you the most? We'd love to hear your thoughts.